Here with more is Young Voices commentator Ethan Brown. Ethan is founder and host of the Sweaty Penguin podcast. Ethan, Sweaty Penguin, that's not a Pittsburgh National Hockey League player living in Florida, is it?
No, it's not, though. That would be pretty interesting.
Seriously, I want to ask you about your podcast in a minute here, but first, just how sustainable is EV technology for the nation at this time?
So certainly EV technology is improving every year. I think there are some misconceptions. For example, if you have a gasoline-powered car and it's reasonably fuel efficient, it would be more sustainable to drive that car to the end of its life and then buy an electric car, as opposed to just buying an electric car and junking your perfectly good car. And that's because there are impacts to actually manufacture a new electric car. But certainly in terms of carbon emissions, electric cars will beat out gasoline-powered cars, assuming the electric grid is just reasonably green, as it is pretty much anywhere in the United States.
Well, you live in California. Of course, most people know that the state has banned the sale of gas-powered cars by 2035. Already, you have more than 1.5 million electric cars on the road in California. You had these rolling blackouts because of the big heat wave there this past summer. And you wrote a column suggesting the Golden State's problems are about to multiply because as it moves forward, of course, pushing EVs and clean energy. But explain what you expect to happen.
Well, I hope they don't actually multiply. I live here and would not like to see blackouts, but I think that this is a big undertaking, right? To fully transition to clean transportation by 2035 certainly is exciting, but my concern was largely that the effort seems very focused on electric cars and not so much focused on other alternatives, things like walking, biking, public transit. I used to live in Orange County, which is a suburb of Los Angeles. Part of why I moved here is actually because there's just so much traffic driving back and forth. My friends had no desire to come see me. So I think that if we're improving some of these car-free alternatives, that can have a much bigger impact than just reducing electric cars. We can also reduce traffic. We can also reduce some of the impacts that are needed to produce electric cars. And we can help people save money because, like you mentioned in the intro, electric cars, though they're getting much cheaper, are still a bit expensive today.
Well, and of course, there's some good news. The U.S. Department of Energy just announced a major advance in fusion energy. We could see the first fusion-powered clean energy plants in the United States within about 10 to 15 years. So what difference might that make? Instead of EVs, could we eventually see fusion-powered cars?
It's possible, but if we think about it, electric vehicles have such a far head start on this, because what happened, or what was announced this week, was this was the first time that a nuclear fusion reaction had a net gain of energy. Before that, it took more energy to create the reaction than to actually, or than the energy that you would get back from it. And if we look at literally any other energy source, be it a fossil fuel, be it solar or wind, be it nuclear fission, which is the nuclear energy we see now, those produce 5, 10, 20, maybe even more times the amount of energy than it takes to create the energy. So I think in that sense, electric cars, similarly to a nuclear fusion car, we have such a head start. And remember, electric cars are improving just as a nuclear fusion car could improve in the future. So I think that as exciting as this is, especially from a scientific perspective, it's not some holy grail answer to all our clean power needs. I think we've already made some good progress.
Yeah, I guess with the electric cars, it's all about the batteries, but those are improving and we'll get there. I guess most people would say, look, you have to start somewhere. I think they just don't like it being forced on them. You've got to have an electric car. Tell us about your podcast. Tell us more about the Sweaty Penguin.
So the Sweaty Penguin is a comedy climate podcast presented by PBS's National Climate Initiative, Peril and Promise, and we're trying to make climate change less overwhelming, less politicized, and more fun. So we do 2 types of episodes. One is called Tip of the Iceberg, where I'll do a kind of late night comedy style monologue breaking down whatever the latest climate news story was, and then I'll answer a question from an audience member, and if any of you have questions, feel free to submit them to us. And then we do deep dives where we've done over 100 interviews with experts from 15 countries and 6 continents exploring a variety of environmental issues, and we'll discuss how they affect not just the environment but also the economy, health, justice, security, etc., and explore a whole bunch of solutions for them. I think there's a lot more hope and optimism around climate than people realize. So I'm very glad that we can explore that each week.
Okay, we'll check it out. Young Voices commentator Ethan Brown. Thank you, Ethan, for being with us today. God bless.
Thanks for having me.